You know the old rabbinic joke, I'm sorry my shirt was so long.
Soaring with the eagle so high, remember me.
Good morning. It is my honor to welcome our esteemed guests to Vancouver Talmud Torah. We are grateful to have you join us so that together we may show our support to the Indigenous communities who have stewarded this land for centuries. Their wounds have been reopened yet again, and their suffering renewed. Today, our community gathers to grieve with them and open our hearts to their struggles. I am thankful that our grade 5 students can be with us today in person, as they are committed to being students of history. May today's ceremony be etched in your memory so that history may never repeat itself. We recognize that our school is situated on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We thank them for having cared for these lands and waters since the horizon of time. We are grateful for this land that now cares for us and has given our community a sanctuary and home. I'd like to welcome Rabbi Dan to the podium.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you all who are joining us online, and thank you to our grade 5 students for being here with us. Because of COVID and the requirements of social distancing, we are limited in the number of speakers and dignitaries that could be physically present with us this morning. And we welcome all of those who are able to be here, and I'd also like to acknowledge those who are joining us virtually: Michael Lee, the MLA from Vancouver, Langara, and Cathy McLeod, the MP from Kamloops-Thompson-Cariboo. They're joining us via the live stream, and we are honored to have you virtually present. We know that your hearts are joined with ours in this time of tremendous grief and national reflection. We all know, however, that this morning's memorial is not about those of us who are here, physically or virtually. Rather, it's about those 215 souls, children who died in the Kamloops residential school who cannot be here, and the thousands more whose bodies remain to be found. We stand here today on a sports field of an elementary school. The sound of children at play normally fills this space every moment of the day. The silence of this field now cries out to us for those precious children whose childhood was cut short, whose school experience was not like those of Vancouver Talmud Torah students, where students are immersed in their own language and culture and traditions. And our hearts break today not just for the loss of life. They break for the loss of childhood, the loss of innocence, the loss of joy, of play, of family, of heritage that was stolen from those children by the misguided names of our nation. It was a different era. It was a different time, but if our people, the Jewish people, have learned anything from our history of trauma and persecution, it is these words, that those who do not study history are bound to repeat it. Echoed by the warning of the Jewish people from the Holocaust, from the Shoah, never again. We have learned and we know in our souls that the greatest tribute we can offer these children and their families is not words of condolence, but acts of conscience. The purpose of prayer is to lead us to action, to make our prayers real, not in heaven, but here on earth. And so this morning we gather as we pray and as we mourn. Let the words and all the memories and the haunting silence of this playground call us to action in their honor and in their memory, so that something as horrible as the residential schools and their abuses that were perpetrated never, ever happen again. It's my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Hannah Dresner of Or Shalom.
The central credo of Judaism is a declaration of oneness. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, children of Israel, God is God and all is one. You and I, humans and other creatures, animals and land, We are all one, all part of one symbiotic whole. And what hurts the Indigenous peoples must hurt me, because I'm a neighbor. What hurts Indigenous peoples must hurt me, because we share a destiny as co-inhabitants of this land, and because we are of the same holy stuff, the same flesh and blood, and the same God breath. May we in the Jewish community dignify survivor stories and witness the endless Indigenous tears that must be shed. May we each respond not just in our sentiments, but through ongoing engagement, service, and grace. The residential school experience stripped children of home and familial love, tribal language and dignity, connection to ancestors. But with all the losses, somehow Indigenous peoples do not surrender the meaning of land as a source, sustainer, and comfort. So in consolation, I offer an image of the land herself, receiving these child victims in the warm, deep blanket of her sacred embrace. A poem by Abigail Echo Hawk of the Pawnee Nation. When they buried the children, what they didn't know, they were lovingly embraced by the land, held and cradled in a mother's heart. The trees wept for them with the wind. They sang mourning songs their mothers didn't notice sing, bending branches to touch the earth around them. The Creator cried for them, tears falling like rain. Mother Earth held them until they could be found. Now, our voices sing the mourning songs with the trees, with the wind. Light sacred fire, ensure they are never forgotten as we sing justice. Justice is what love looks like in the public sphere. There's no greater commandment than loving our neighbors, our fellows, as ourselves. And so we stand with Indigenous fellows in love for justice, for the actualization of recovered records and supportive measures for holistic, multifaceted healing and reparation. I'd like to introduce Rabbi Andrew Rosenblatt of the Sharet Tzedek Synagogue.
Thank you, Rabbi Dresner, and also thank you to all of those who have gathered today, both online and here in person, our political representatives, the rabbis, members of the community, and most importantly, you students. It's a very difficult thing to decide what of the many messages to really broadcast today, and for whom is this message? One of the questions is, what's the character of the message? Certainly, there should be one of empathy, and that message should be expressed very much in the language of those who were hurt and harmed, in the language of the Indigenous peoples themselves. And I thank Rabbi Dresner for her poem. I'm also glad that we have representatives of the First Nations here with us today, who will also be skillful in communicating that. However, it's also important for us to take the lesson of never again, the universal lesson here, the one which teaches us that we have to respect all of humanity. And for that lesson, because this is an event for the Jewish community, I have chosen specifically Jewish words for that. I want to speak in language and in tones that are resonant to our community. And so I choose a line from the Talmud in Sanhedrin. It says, Lefichach nivra adam yichidi. In the narrative of Bereshit, we understand of Genesis that first Adam was created alone, singular. Why? Lilamedcha shekol ha'ma'abed nefesh achat ma'aleh alav hakatuv ki'ilu ibed olam maleh. To teach that anyone who extinguishes even a single life, the Torah, our tradition, considers it as if they have destroyed an entire world. And so today we remember, at a minimum, the destruction of 215 worlds. And that same first Adam, the Torah teaches us, was created in the image of God. And so not only was this an affront against humanity, but every insult towards humanity is in and of itself an insult toward God. If you will, a stamping out of the image of God. I want us to remember as a community, I want us to appreciate that our tradition teaches us to value every life on this planet, every individual on this planet, as sacred, as sacrosanct, as needing of respect and veneration like we would the divine. And just perhaps to help us make sure that this image is concrete and deep within us, the fact that pierced my heart the most was when I learned that most of these children, I shouldn't say most, we understand a significant portion of these children died while trying to escape to reunite with their families. They died of exposure in the cold, in the frost, simply trying to do one thing which every human being would feel exactly the same way. They would simply trying to return to their own families. Extend my condolences to the entire First Nations community, to the families, to the relatives, to all those who have lost individuals who disappeared in the residential schools and certainly in the Kamloops residential school. I'm now privileged to introduce a representative from the next generation, Carrie Plotkin, who is going to share some words with us.
Hi, I'm Carrie Plotkin and I'm in grade 5. I'd like to read You Hold Me Up by award-winning writer Monique Gray Smith. Monique is of Cree, Lakota, and Scottish ancestry whose work has focused on raising the awareness of the resilience of Indigenous people. Monique and her family are blessed to live on the Clungan territory in Victoria, British Columbia. You Hold Me Up is a quiet story about the simplicity of love, the importance of respect, and the cultivation of compassion. It was written to encourage us young people, our care providers, and our educators to talk about reconciliation and the importance of the connections children make with our friends, classmates, and families. You hold me up. You hold me up when you are kind to me, when you share with me, when you learn with me. You hold me up when you play with me, when you laugh with me, when you sing with me. You hold me up when you comfort me, when you listen to me, when you respect me. You hold me up, I hold you up, we hold each other up. You can find all of Monique's books in our bi-weekly Learning Commons. They are used to share wisdom, knowledge, hope, and important teaching that love is medicine.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure and our privilege and honor to introduce our MP for Vancouver Grand, Jody Wilson-Raybould, also a member of the First Nations, to share some words with us this morning.
Gelakasla, thank you, Rabbi Dan, thank you, all the rabbis that spoke, and thank you for the sharing the poem. I want to acknowledge the grade 5 students that are here, and I'm honored to have been asked to come and reflect and say a few words. And I want to recognize and honor and remember the 215 children that were found in a mass grave outside of the Kamloops Indian residential school. And it's important, as the rabbis have said, to remember these souls, to never forget. And I'm happy to hear that you are students of history. Residential schools, the institutions, are a very dark part of our history. They were in existence for over 100 years in Canada, from 1870s to 1996, when the last one closed in Saskatchewan. The last one closed in British Columbia in 1984. These institutions were created by the law of Canada and run by churches. There were 139 residential schools across the country, and it's estimated that 150,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children attended these schools, forcibly removed from their homes, compelled to attend. And the purpose of residential schools, as stated by the first Prime Minister of this country, was to remove the Indian from the child, to get rid of the Indian problem in this country. The legacy of colonialism still is with us in law, and we need to do something about it. People have asked me, as I know they've asked many Indigenous peoples, how do you feel? Many people have asked me that. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. And I feel a deep sense of sadness, because this is not an isolated incident. There will be more that will be revealed. And we have to recognize that every Indigenous person in this country has a connection to residential schools and the harmful legacies that still exist. But I am still optimistic that through young people like you and the people behind me, that we can make a change in this country. The residential schools were eliminated from the law of Canada, which is the Indian Act, but the Indian Act still exists, so it does say that we can change the laws in this country, as we must. I want to reflect, just in closing, a bit of my personal story. Most of my relatives went to residential schools. My grandmother, Pugladi, was taken away from her home when she was a very young girl and forced to go to the Indian residential school, St. Michael's, in Alert Bay. She faced terrible violence at that school, but she escaped from that school, and she made it home, and she is the knowledge keeper in my nation, the Kwakwaka'wakw, and she passed our knowledge, our traditions, our laws and customs on to me. It's said that Indigenous peoples are resilient, and we truly are. And I look around here and I feel the sense of community. I've heard words like justice and love. In my worldview and our teachings, we are all fundamentally interconnected and interdependent. And we live by principle, and those principles are of equality and inclusion and love and justice. Thank you for hosting this important event. Thank you for joining people across the country in remembrance of the 215 souls in Kamloops and beyond. Yala Kasla, I am witnessing the teachings of my ancestors here today, and I know that we will move forward together. Yala Kasla.
Mismoyle David, Adonai Roi Lamo Yechso, Binois Tesheyar Bitzeini, Amemenu Chosinaleni, Nafshi Yeshoivev, Nafshi Yeshoivev, Yancheni v'maklei tzedek l'man shemoi gam ki yelech b'gabay tzalmoves lo yirara ki ato imodi Shivtecho משענתך, שבתך משענתך, המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן, תערוך לפני שולחן, תערוך לפני שולחן, נגד צעררי, דישן טוב השמן ראשי, דישן טוב השמן ראשי, דישן טוב השמן ראשי, כויסי רבויה, אך טוב בוי וחסד, ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, לירך ימים.
Thank you, Cantor Ozreck. I want to thank my colleagues and especially Jody for those beautiful words, meaningful. I also want to ask those of you who are in cyber world and with us to bear with me for just a minute as I specifically address these incredible grade 5 students who are here today. You have been absolutely wonderful in your patience and in your ability to listen and to be with us today. You know, grade 5, you are so lucky. If you think about why we are here today, the memory of why we are here today, you have the ability, the opportunity to go to a school that provides you with the richness of the memory of your history, with your tradition, and with your basic sustenance. The children whom we are remembering today were forced to go to schools and to a specific school that ripped away their culture, attempted to take away from them their language, attempted to take them literally away from their families. Today, we are remembering children who have the exact opposite of the opportunities that you have. Indeed, as Jody said before, just a minute ago, we are here to remember children who not only lost their lives, but were taken away from everything that brought comfort to them. Cantor Ozreck just sang words of Mizmor David, of the 23rd Psalm. And for me, the most important words of this psalm are those that remind us of comfort, the comfort that we seek today. In English, those words are, "You are my shepherd, I am content. You lead me to rest in sweet grasses, to lie down by the quiet waters. I am refreshed. You lead me down the right path, the path that unwinds in the pattern of your name. And even if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear, for you are with me, comforting me with your rod and your staff, showing me each step. You prepare a table for me in the midst of my adversity, and moisten my head with oil. Surely my cup is overflowing, and goodness and kindness will follow me all the days of my life. And in the long days beyond, I will always live within your house." I'm going to ask that Rabbi Shlomo Gabay of Beit Midrash come and share with us concluding words.
Thank you, Rabbi Infeld, for those beautiful, heartful words. So much pain, so much sorrow, so much sadness. I was thinking, what's the most appropriate prayer to say today? A prayer composed by Rabbi Joseph Carlebach, Chief Rabbi of Hamburg, April 23rd, 1936. I'll read it in Hebrew, followed by the English translation. Hinei bnei keilatenu nikbetzu gam ne'esfu yachad, ונישא לבבנו אל כפיה אליך אל השמיים. בעת צרה ומצוקה, עת קצר רוח וכליון נפש, שכל ראש לחולי וכל לבב דווי. אנא רחם נא, חמול נא וחוס נא על כל יושבי המדינה הזאת. וכל בני בשר יקראו בשמך. השקיפה ממעון קודשך וברך את ארצנו וארץ מגורנו, אשר עליה ישבנו. ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו, כי אל שומרנו ומצילנו אתה. כי אל מלך חנון ורחום אתה, ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם. We are gathered together and carry our heavy hearts to you, God, in heaven, in times of trouble and distress, in times of impatience and annihilated spirit, that every head aches with a bleeding heart. Please have mercy on all the inhabitants of this land, and all flesh and blood will call on your name. View from your holy abode and bless this land and the abode on which we dwell. And in the shadow of your wings shelter us, for you, Almighty, guards us from all evil. For you are a gracious and merciful King. Save our departure and our coming to life and peace from now until forever. Amen. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you here in person and all those online for attending this incredible, meaningful memorial. Thank you.
Thank you, grade 5s. I'm going to ask 5A to please stand up and you can go back to your class with your teachers. Thank you for being with us today. 5B, thank you. And 5C, thank you very much for your respect today.